Hey guys, good evening or maybe morning. I don't know where you are from, but we are in Germany, in Hamburg right now, and we are back again for one Instagram and YouTube live stream about a classic graduated form. And today we're gonna do it at a real model. I choose Heidi because Heidi is a member of our team. She supports our team in the salon all the time, and now she's asking me for a really nice, wonderful haircut if I can do it, and I asked her if she would be able to join us for today so that I can do this classic graduated pixie cut on a real model. So we are happy that Heidi is here, and I'm happy that you are there one more time for a live stream about haircutting. For those of you which don't know me, my name is Marcus, and I'm working as point cutter and as a hairdresser and hair educator for many years now. So, for the beginning, what is the plan? I said that we're gonna do a short graduated pixie haircut on Heidi. What does it mean? A classic graduated form is always closer in this contour area and has more volume at the top of the head. What we done to prepare her hair, we did some highlights inside, that because she likes to be blonde. So that's the reason why we did that. And now we start doing the cutting with a narrow line here around the ear and going to a close neck area, and we create lots of volume in that area. And if you can see, she has a little movement in her hair, and this hair is really thick. So what we also have to do is that we make it a little bit more softer, make it a little bit more easier to move the hair, that the form, the shape we create is gonna be established, and which makes it easier for her to do the blow drying at home. This is my main focus. So how can I make this haircut as suitable and easy for the client as possible? So we have a side parting here. This is what I did in advance, and now we're gonna start this haircut in the side area. And what's important in this area? We do a short graduation around the ear. That's what I said in the beginning. And later on, when we cut the hair on the top of the head, this will have a little overlay that will go over this shorter line around the ear. And no worries, guys, because this kind of cutting, this classic graduated pixie, is also suitable for women in a higher age. It does not mean that we have a strong undercut. It means we have a soft overlapping and a soft undercut form, which helps her to style her hair at home much more easier. So I start now with the graduation in this area, and you will see later on how I will do the overlapping. And of course you will see the result as well. So the first what I'm gonna do is I do a pre-parting at the crest area to remove the hair at the top of the head. This parting is really important, so don't make it too high, because you need the amount of hair when you do the overlapping later on. It should be enough hair, so don't go too high with this parting. And if the hair is wet enough, you don't need a clip as well. So this is the sectioning in the crest area, and now I'm gonna start with diagonal sections around the head to the middle of the nape. It's important that you're gonna do, I think we turn around so we can see the little bit more, so that you start with diagonal sectioning. You put your fingers parallel to the section and you do a rectangular distribution. And you start with a shorter line on the front hairline and you create a length increase when you go backwards to the middle of the nape. So, like I said, it's much easier when the hair is really wet. So it's now a little bit more dry because we have lots of light here inside this room. So I need to make it a little wetter. So, and when I reach the ear area, I go ahead doing this diagonal sectioning through the nape area as well. If you want, you can move your client with the head a little bit sideways, which makes it easier for you to do the graduation. And still continuing with rectangular distribution, follow the shape of the head and graduate section by section. You can see the volume and the movement on the hair is now on its way. So I'm working step by step in the direction of the middle of the nape, still continuing with the same technique. It's really important that you use a mobile angle and follow with your finger the shape of the head. If you don't do this, you create too much length increase to the middle of the nape, and at the end you will create too much heaviness in this area. So take care about your cutting angle. If you want to do such a haircut, such a classic graduated pixie haircut, and you have an asymmetrical form, you have a side pardoning, so I would recommend to you that you always start on the smaller side and do the longer side afterwards. This is all good hairdressers gonna do it this way, so it helps you a little bit more to establish the right volume and see if you are on the right way when you're doing the cutting. So if you reach the middle of the nape, you can continue in defining the contour line a little bit, because it depends how the movement of the hair is gonna be. Afterwards, when I'm finished with the graduation, I'm gonna do the contour line, and I cut the ear totally free at this moment. Because I further explained that I do an overlay here. An overlapping, which if you do this shorter area underneath, it's better to have a clear line around the ear if you create the overlay later on. So make sure that your line is nearly perfect before you're going to do the next sectioning. Because in that case you have not to come back on this and you see the final result very soon. So I'm now checking once again the thickness of the hair. And if necessary, and you can also do this, you can do a little bit scissor or comb in this area to define the contour line a little bit more nicer, a little bit more softer. What I'm going to do now is do a little double check on this line. We're going back and we put the head a little bit sidewards. And I do now a little cross-checking. If there are any tips of hair, I have to move away. Because if you have a hair like Heidi's, which is very thick, very strong, and has lots of movement, it's always important that you have a really perfect cutting line and create the right movement and the right volume and take totally control about the hair form. So this is called a cross-check, and a small information about cross-checking. If you're gonna do, like I start with diagonal sectioning backwards, the cross-check means you go in the opposite directions. If your sectioning is diagonally backwards, the opposite is diagonal forward. That means if you want to do a cross-check, you work in the opposite direction and only remove a little bit of hair. Only check it if there are some tips which are not totally correct, especially when you cut short hair in a mobile technique. There's always a higher risk to have some tips which are not cut perfect, and you can do this cross-check, and so you have totally control about your cutting line. If you have done this, before you continue, and you make the decision that you want to have it a little bit closer here, you can use a texturizing scissor like my Barracuda and do some texturizing now before you continue cutting the top of the head. So what I do now is to remove a little weight to give the hair the opportunity to fall a little bit more narrow here, to have no volume in this area, because that's important if Heidi wants to do her blow drying at home, that she has always a nice and interesting head form, and so it's important that you have a less volume in this area. So now I continue cutting the hair at the top. And like I promised you in the beginning, we now do a little overlapping. And you can see she has a good hair length for this. So we can create this overlapping, and what we're gonna do is we start here with a diagonal line, so we create more length around the face, and we go a little bit more shorter to the back of the head, which means that we have a connection to the cutting line we did in advance in this area at the nape, when we have the overlapping only here in the side area. So I move you once more time. No, in different positions so that people can see. So you can see I have a diagonal positioning of my fingers. I have a low cutting angle, and I create this diagonal line forward and go shorter when I continue it going to the middle of the nape and get a connection in the nape area. So I move Heidi a little bit more, so you can see what I explained. The overlapping is here in the side area, and I go into connection in this area. Guys, this is only a technique I use very often when I do chance cutting. Of course, chance cuts are shorter in the side area, but the technique and the thinking, the way of thinking, is totally the same. So create a tight area here and create a volume and the length with a disconnection overlay. So we take the next section from the top of the head and we reach now the side parting. That was the point where we started. I comb the hair in a natural distribution, taking care about my guideline, creating the overlapping, turn it out so that people can better see what we're going to do here. And I continue cutting the connection to the nape area. Now do one more last section. It's also always only a small section we took here. So now we are done with that. Now I check if the hair fall is like I expected, and you can see in the final result this overlapping is so soft, so cool that it does not touches the eye directly. It's just only to create tightness and volume at the same time. If you can see it from the front, you can better understand what I mean. This line is very tight and the volume is building from the hair from the top. So, now we continue with the second side and we do totally the same technique. We do the sectioning at the crest area around the head. And of course, if you want to create more asymmetrical, you can cut this side also a little bit longer. It's like you want it. Like your customer, your client wanted. So it's your designer's decision you do. For us, we decided we do both sides in the same length. But when you do this haircut, you can, of course, you can do it, you can change that and can create a little bit longer at a bigger side. So I start with the same technique. I do my sectioning diagonally backwards, strong diagonal backwards. I do the rectangular distribution and my finger position is parallel, and when I go, I work mobile with a mobile finger position and follow the shape of the head. Now I reach the area around the ear, and now I'm continuing doing my sectioning into the nape area. So that means I have shorter sections here and longer sections when I move around the head and I'm behind the ear. So I take a different position so you can better see what I'm going to do. A little bit more. And take a closer look how my finger position is following the shape of the head. This is really important because you need to have the nape very short, because this makes the shape of the haircut nicer, because you have a tighter area here, you create more volume. And this is typical for this classic graduated pixie cut. This is what makes it to a classical pixie cut. And I move my head around, following the shape of the head and following the roundness of the head form. Now I get the connection to the other side. That means my technique is finished now. And the next step is defining the contour line. Comb the hair in the natural distribution and check the line you create and cut away all the hair around the ear to be safe that you have not too much volume in this area. I'm sorry, Heidi, because It's a kind of a haircut we need to turn around many times. Otherwise, the audience can't see anything. So, and maybe you have in mind the next step. That was the cross-check. Go in the opposite direction. Make a diagonal forward sectioning and double check the line you create. Use the same angle and the same finger position. It's a parallel finger position, and double check the graduation you did in the beginning. So you have the perfect control about the hair form and the form you're gonna do. So, cross-check is done, and you can see if I comb the hair forward, it works perfect. If I comb it backwards, it's also the same. And if you do this kind of cross-check, you start with diagonal sections backwards, and you do the corrections, doing diagonal sections forward. You have a perfect fall in both directions. This is a little trick. If you want to have a better control and you give your client different opportunities to style your haircut afterwards. So, next step. Make the hair a little thinner. Remove a little weight. Maybe some of you ask yourself, why is he doing this texturizing technique in the wet hair and in the middle of the haircut and is not doing it at the end? I do it this way if I do an overlapping later. If I do an overlapping afterwards, it makes sense to finish this area and make it perfect before you do the overlapping. When you create the overlapping later on, it's always a big loss of time to comb it back and do the texturizing at the end of the haircut. So I would recommend, if you have a shorter hair here, do the texturizing in advance and you do the overlapping afterwards. So we go back to our classical cutting scissor. And now we do the same what we did on the other side, but I said we create a little asymmetrical haircut. So I think it's nicer for Heidi if she has a little bit more heaviness on that side. So we leave the hair a little bit longer on this side, but in principle we're cutting the same technique. We do the overlapping here in the side area. We go a diagonal forward and you turn into this diagonal backward line. So at the end we will have a concave line here in this overlapping. I will do this and you can see it later what I mean. So comb the hair in the natural distribution, take a low cutting angle, take a diagonal finger position and cut away all the length you don't need. And now I go ahead shape of the head. And now I create a connection to my graduated form I did in advance. So that you understand me right, it's important that the overlapping is only in this area. Here we have a connection into the graduated form we create in advance. So, I take the next section. Move a little bit. We need a little water. It's life. So we take the next section, and we are right away in the middle of the head now, but we continue cutting all the lengths on the top through the side area. And we do a little connection later on in the fringe area, but I will explain this when I'm at that point. So I try a little bit. So this is the last section in the side area. Oh, as you can see, there is no more lengths I have to remove. Just double check. And what's next is to double check the connection of both sides in the nape area. Just remove a little bit of hair here, not too much, only to take control about the movement and the connection between both sides. So, now I want to show you this line I created. You can see this overlapping diagonal forward and the movement of the line to get in connection in the nape area. What we have to do now is to finalize the nape. This is what we do next. So, we check the contour line. And this is up to you if you want to do this haircut at one of your clients, if you want to create it shorter or if you want to leave some more length. But what I recommend is not to have the hair too thick. Otherwise, the volume you create in this area is go away if you have too much heaviness and too much hair, too much thickness in the nape. So I prefer make it a little bit shorter. But at the end, you have to speak with your client in the chair what she's expecting, if she wants to have it a little bit shorter or she prefer to have a little bit more length in this area. Especially if you have a color like we have, which there is a big difference in the lightness of the color between the hair on the top and the hair in the nape, I recommend to do a little bit more texturizing, to have the connection between both areas very soft, and your color is not like bang, it's more like a softer connection. And you can reach this by using a texturizing scissor, as well as you have the opportunity to take better control about the movement of the hair in the nape area. As you may see, one of my colleagues, she did Heidi's hair color yesterday. She did an amazing job doing highlights in such a short hair and make it so perfect to get a connection between the dark hair in the nape and the light hair on the top. It's wonderful. Teresa, great job if you follow us. Good. What we have to do now is the fringe area. This is the last step at dry cutting. What I spoke with Heidi that I would prefer for her having more heaviness in this area. So what we're doing now is we do some soft layering around the head and around the face, and we're taking care that we remove some of this heaviness, but we still keep this length here, because we want to have a diagonal line through this area so we get a connection and soft layers which help you to control the fall of the hair around the head that is going in this direction. So you start from the side pardoning, and you do the shortest point here in this area, and you start from this shortest point and create a diagonal line through the other side. We comb all the hair through this first cutting line as a stationary technique, and afterwards we double check the form, and you can see the diagonal line we create. Later on, when we do the blow drying, we want to blow dry this hair in this direction. So it's not gonna stay here in the face, but it's an opportunity. Maybe she's going out, having some drinks with friends, and she wants to have it a little bit more sexy. Then she can keep it the hair in the face. But at work, maybe in the office, she combed it away and shows he has a better look at the work. So, now we do the connection to the other side. And we have the same issue here. We have this length and we don't need it. If we keep that, you will always be in trouble that the tips of the head turn to the outside. And this is something what makes it really hard to do the blow drying at home for her. So it's good to create a diagonal line through the side area on the smaller side as well. I want to show you that. So let me turn around once more. I do a little sectioning, and now I start from the shortest point with a strong diagonal finger position and make a connection between both sides. And I remove some of the length on the smaller side. But this helps her to do the blow drying and keep more control about the hair form. So, when I comb the hair now around the face, you can see the final result. The shortest point of this concave line, it's here at the side parting. And I have a stronger concave here and a less strong concave on this side. So this helps me taking control about the hair fall, especially if you have a hair with lots of movement inside. So, last step in wet cutting is to double check all the tips here on the top of the head and just remove a little bit of it, not too much, only to round it up your form. Just do this on the smaller side as well. I combed the hair in a 90 degrees angle and double check my length here, but there's nothing to cut, so the form of the haircut is still finished now. What I'm gonna do now is to take my texturizing scissor and remove some of the thickness of the hair. Of course, you can do this in dry hair as well, or you can do it in wet hair. So I do some slice cutting, removing some weight here. I'm closing the scissor only a little bit and remove in slow movements and cut off some of the thickness. And if you go more to the top of the head, you stay away from the bases and remove the weight in the length and the tips of the hair. Don't do this directly at the skin because it's too risky. Otherwise you have short hair standing up here and this does not really look good. So stay away from the base. and I don't do slice cutting in the last section at the top of the head. I did it underneath, and the last centimeters here I do no slice cutting, because this helps me make me secure that I have no short hair on this position, so the lengths overlap it and the texturized hairs are underneath. So I move to the other side, doing the same technique there as well. We turn around a little bit. Oops. Okay. So, and don't do slice cutting in your last section. Okay. This is the final result of this classic graduated pixie form, and you may see that it looks very classical, but he has some issues and he has some solutions for you to create a classical look with a very modern technique. And a modern technique you can use maybe for chance cutting as well, when you cut the sides shorter, but this overlapping is something which works in many, many cases. I often use overlappings and undercutting hair lengths when I do shorter hair, because it always helps me keeping the volume and the length at the top of the head. So guys, as every time, we will post the images of the final result as well as the graphics in maybe 30 or 45 minutes, so you can see when I do the blow drying, what is the final of this haircut. I have to thank you now for your attention. I hope you get some ideas and some ways of thinking maybe different about classical pixie haircutting, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will come back when we do the next live session, maybe in 2 or 3 weeks. So stay tuned, be healthy, yours Marcos.